So we are going to turn tonight to some issues of property and financial types of things in terms of looking at death and dying and end of life sorts of things. We're going to touch just briefly on an ethical will, passing on your values. We're going to spend more time with that next week. This is the first time that I've done this series where we're going to devote an entire session to that, and we're going to plan on that next week. The following week, the 7th, no,
Yes.
there's at some point we are going to take a night off. Hold on a minute. Let me check my calendar.
Well, next week is the 7th. Week
Yeah,
after.
next week is the 7th.
It's probably the 14th, which I think is Ash
14th.
Wednesday, isn't it?
Yes.
That's Ash Wednesday. We are definitely not meeting Ash Wednesday. Okay, well, we are taking off on the 7th. So there. Okay.
So we're
I
not
will-
meeting next week?
We will not meet next week. Correct. So, we are going to start with a couple of scripture passages here. Kind of with this idea that we see in scripture of at the end of life, taking steps to pass along values or taking steps to pass along the way you want to be remembered. There's a long history of that in scripture, and we're going to touch on just two of those instances right now. So if everybody will get your Bibles, we're going to open up to Genesis 49. So by the end of Genesis, Jacob's sons have all made it down to Egypt, and they discover that their brother Joseph, who they thought was dead, is actually a big deal down in Egypt. And he tells his brothers, bring your families. I want to make sure you guys will have enough when this famine hits, and bring dad. So Jacob comes down, and Jacob is in Egypt. And as he is dying, he has a vision for each of his sons. And most of chapter 49 is that vision. He talks about, what he sees in the future for each of his sons. And then he actually leaves, very specific instructions of what they are to do when it is time to bury him. Would somebody care to read for us Genesis 49, 29 through 33?
I can do that. 29 through 33.
Yes.
Then he charged them, saying to them, I'm about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field at Machpelah near Mamre in the land of Canaan, in the field that Abraham bought from Ephron, the Hittite as a burial site. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were purchased from the Hittites. When Jacob ended his charge to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people.
So, yeah, we can see here that he is, sharing something special about each of his children, and then gives these very specific instructions. And there is the tomb of the patriarchs somewhere in the West Bank that has the grave of Abraham, the grave of Isaac, and the grave of Jacob. So, at least according to tradition, his children did honor his wishes. So that is one example. Now we're going to jump over to the New Testament. In John's Gospel, Jesus is quite loquacious. He has a lot to say, and if you have one of those red letter Bibles, it really leaps off the page at you. But chapters 13 through 17 are a time when Jesus kind of summarizes his teaching and tells his followers, if you're going to live as my people, these are the things you need to be doing. So he leaves these very specific instructions for people. These are the teachings I want you to remember. These are the ways I want you to live. So he really works hard to shape his legacy. He says, if you people want to say that you are following me, this is what you're going to do. And we kind of see that um, in very concise form if we look at John 13:31 through 35. Nick, would you share with us, please, John 13:31 through 35?
When he had gone out, Jesus said, now the Son of Man has to be glorified, and the God has to be glorified in him. If God has given glory, God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and will glorify him at once. Little children, I'm with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I'm going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you, and also should love one another. By
So,
this,
oh, I'm sorry.
by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if we have love for one another.
So, again, these are the values Jesus wants to make sure the people who come after him really understand mean something to him. And we're going to touch next week on a couple different thoughts and ways about how we can do similar sorts of things. A few things just to touch on tonight in your folder of documents. There is a Christian preamble for your will. And that again is, as so many of these things are, it's an example. You can adopt it wholesale. You could adapt it to whatever you want. You could just say, I like the idea. I'll write my own. People have suggested you talk about forgiveness, that you would like to forgive whomever, that you would ask for forgiveness from particular people, or that you invite people in your life to forgive one another. You could talk about death and resurrection, how you would like to be remembered, what are the values you want people to continue to embody. There's a lot of ways you can give people some very clear direction about how you want to be remembered. And we're going to deal with that in much more detail next week in the morning. So you can certainly tune in for that. I will record that as well. So I just want to touch on that briefly. I also want to just briefly encourage folks. If you have not done so already, please carefully consider being an organ donor. You can go to donatelifeindiana.org and you can get yourself signed up on there. I included a frequently asked questions page about organ donation. A couple of the questions that have come up more frequently when I've done these sorts of things, um, will they, in effect, pull the plug on me sooner if I'm an organ donor? No, they don't even notify the Donate Life people that they have an organ donor who is nearing death until all decisions have been made and everything is final. So the question of people coming to harvest the organs, if that is the correct word, that does not even come up until everything is pretty much a done deal as it is. So yeah, it will not impact your medical care. And in fact, just this morning, we had one of the people in our group say that her daughter was the recipient of a kidney and a pancreas from an organ donor. She said, my daughter would not be alive today if it was not for organ donors. Somebody else said, you know, yeah, but I plan to, I believe what they said was, I plan to use my organs for a good long time still. And I said, if you are 85 and your liver is pretty much functional. The person with liver cancer or whatever who is 35 and their liver is completely wrecked, they would love to have your 85-year-old liver. Um, so even if you live to be 100, there may still be some parts that could be a blessing to somebody. So um, take a look at those frequently asked questions on organ donation, and really urge you to sign up to be an organ donor. Let me stop there briefly and ask if there are questions on any of those first couple of pieces.
Somehow I thought the driver's license showed donor response. I just looked at driver's license. I don't see it there. I'm pretty sure we signed up for that.
Right. And I thought recently there was some sort of new registry that started or something, but it may be worth it just to go to the website and check it out. And again, it's the sort of thing. Um, also, make sure you tell your family, because even if you're signed up on the registry, if you're in your family member is in the hospital room and they say, no, I don't want you to take my loved one's organs, they're probably not going to open up their iPad, say, well, his name's on the registry, I'm coming for his kidneys anyway. So let your family know that this matters to you. But yes, I would check the website and make sure that you are properly signed up for whatever kind of donation you would like to do. So, as we did last week, we have a guest presenter. Tonight's presenter is not related to me, but she does come with close to 4 decades of experience in the legal profession. Kathy Patton, member here at Holy Shepherd, is going to be sharing with us some information on how we can, even after we die, be good and faithful stewards of all the material things that have been entrusted to us in our lives, how we can make sure those continue to support our values and live those things out. So, without further ado, let me turn it over to Kathy.
Thank you. I will give you a little bit of a warning. I am an attorney and have been for over 40 years, but my specialty is criminal law because I was a prosecutor for all of those years. But I did my best to remember what I learned in law school and to brush up on the basics of what we're going to be talking about. I think, as you all know, just as you saw last week, when you get into specialties, those seem to be areas you know a lot about. And I didn't want to be too specific about details of very complicated trusts and wills and pour over wills and all the other things I might mention. So basically, I noticed this morning I didn't exactly follow the outline that Past prepared. So I think he asked me a question about power of attorney for property because I see that toward the top. And I think I didn't because I was thinking in terms of some of the things we talked about last week, which was signing things for living wills and powers of attorneys for certain things that were more specified. And so I will just mention, yes, you can give someone else the power of attorney for your property, not just your health. And of course, you can change that if you want later. And people do that, as you probably know, when they get older and they feel that it's too much pressure and too confusing to keep track of their Medicare and their insurance and appointments and paying bills and being responsible for making financial decisions. And so that is something that can always be done outside of, having a will or a trust. Those, of course, end the minute the person dies. They don't have anything more to say at that point in time. But as we discussed this morning, excuse me, there are certain things you can do upon death. You can not worry about it at all, but I hope all of us appreciate our blessings. And if we have some to pass on, would want to do that, to the benefit of others, and that they would be blessed in turn. And so if you have such things and you want to protect them and you don't want them to go to the state, because if you die intestate, excuse me, I've got a tickle. I'm going to take a drink. Intestate means without a will or trust or anything, then the state will decide where everything goes. So, and every state has different plans, so you'd have to know where you are. But if you don't do that, you can do a couple of other things. If you can have a simple situation, and I think Pastor might even mention this in his outline, but a simple situation where you can simply say, well, I'm just going to have joint ownership of everything. Maybe you're a person who's elderly, the spouse has passed, you've sold the property, you're in an assisted living, or you're renting. You have only a checking account. Maybe you have a car, maybe you don't. And you have possessions that simply aren't valuable enough to worry about and have to pay to go through probate or to pay to have a trust established. You can have everything, those things in joint ownerships. So upon your death, it automatically passes to the other person. The state isn't going to come after you or the IRS or anything for, your set of pots or glasses that grandma gave you, and things like that you might have around the house that some people might think are valuable, but really wouldn't be with anybody else. So that is one plan that can work for people. It worked for my parents. However, in this day and age, it seems like we have more things than we used to. And so then you have to make a decision, are you going to have a will? And they preface this by saying, when you decide to have a will or a trust, set up something like that, you want to go to an expert, you want to go to a professional who will guide you and head you in the right direction. And by that, I mean not just any lawyer. You wouldn't come to somebody like me, because I only know what to do with criminal things as a prosecutor. But people, it's better to go to somebody who that's what they primarily do, because they can give you the best advice. And these are things you could do a will very simply by yourself. Someone this morning mentioned her mother simply had something written out on a piece of paper, and that can work. If nobody's complaining about it. But the problem with that, once there's a will like that and things weren't given away or set up as a joint possession, then you're going to have to pay for probate. You probably have to hire an attorney. You could probably try to do it yourself, but it's going to take time. It's not going to happen right away, and it's going to cost some money. As would a will. There's advantages and disadvantages to wills and trusts, and it will work. Some things work better for others, depending upon what their desires are, what their financial situation is, how private they want things to be. So as you know, you can set up in a will what you want to happen with whatever you own. But in addition to that, you can also say, gee, I want, if you have children and they're still young, I want these people to take care of them. And this is what I want for my funeral. You can put a lot of things in there that wouldn't necessarily go in a trust. The other thing that's negative about it is there's tax consequences for wills that you might not have in a trust. And a will is very public. Anybody can look up who got what and what happened and all that. So if you care about that, it's important, you don't want it to be public, then you could consider a trust if it's worth it to you. I had something else about wills. Maybe I'll think of it later. The differences. Yeah, pretty much you can provide for, you can provide, that's the other issue. You can provide for specific people. In a will, you can't, at least in most of the states I know of. And I mentioned earlier that Louisiana is a weird state. They have Napoleonic law or something. It's just crazy. So I don't know what it's like there. But you can't disinherit a spouse. Depending on the state, they have to get probably a half or approximately something like that, a quarter. Can't do that. However, in a will, you can disinherit a child. So perhaps your state allows for a separation of the money if you don't have a will to go to a spouse and a quarter to each, two children, a quarter to each, or half each, or whatever. And so that way you can control that. You can disinherit a child if you feel that this child would waste everything you have, and you can just not put them in the will at all. Or some people will say, I give them $1, so nobody argues that maybe they forgot them, because clearly they don't, but you don't have to do that. So those are the kinds of things you can do in wills. You can have some specific places to put your money. Now, you can do that in a trust as well. And the will, by the way, also has to go through probate. So it's going to cost money to do that. You're probably going to have an attorney to guide you through that. I was an executor of an estate for a couple of family members, and I usually hired a lawyer if there was a question about, one was an automobile accident, got complicated. So hired somebody to do that. And by the time it went through, from settling that money and then settling the estate, it was quite a costly legal expense. Then, where was I? Trusts are private. Nobody can know, it's hidden. If you have real estate in the trust and if it's not named after you. After the meeting this morning, I talked to someone and she said, yes, I did have my real estate in, but my trust is in my name. So somebody could look and see that I own that. So if you do, and you put it in a bank's name or something or in another name, then that'll be absolutely private. The trust too, there's two kinds. You can have, well, before I say that, there's some things can't go in a trust. We talked about this morning, yes, real estate can. I don't think cars can, retirement accounts can't, flexible spending accounts can't. So there's other things that would have to be taken care of in another way. But you can have what's called a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. Now, if there's a lot of money involved and a lot of taxations, an irrevocable trust would be better financially most of the time, not all of the time, because of tax problems. If you have a revocable trust, because you have control over it yourself your whole life, you're going to be taxed on those decisions. The irrevocable trust, on the other hand, you're not going to be likely be able to change. So there's some circumstances you can, but that's the reason that the IRS looks at them differently. And again, I'm not a tax lawyer, so I don't know all the details of that. It is also handled with immediately upon death. It could be just a matter of a couple of weeks for everybody to cross the T's and dot the I's to settle on where the money goes instead of waiting for dates to get into probate court and settle a will. The trust is quicker. It can get very complicated, but sometimes there's a good reason for that. But again, it depends on you as an individual and what you want to do. Trusts and wills and do what you want. I'm trying to think, what did I skip? Oh, giving. We're going to talk about that later. Pastor has that later on, but it's really important because in a trust or any other way, you can give money to your church or any other charity, but we're talking about church. So if you had in your mind you wanted to give to the church, first of all, as he noted in his outline, it's really important not to put a burden on the church and say, well, I would like to put $100 toward a new organ. Well, that $100 could sit there a very long time until somebody else comes up with the 100,000 more that you need to do that. So when you want to designate a specific thing, it's usually wiser to contact pastor, the board, or someone to find out, what is the need, how is it best served? So I'm not telling you what to do, but probably a monetary contribution to be used, to the benefit, the best use for the church. But if you have special ways you want it to go, find something that will meet with the amount of money you're willing to give. And it's very good because it avoids taxes. The government is going to not come in and get money off of your blessing, and your blessing is then going to go to the church in whole, that which you want to give. I don't know, Pastor, I seem to go by that kind of fast. I'm trying to think of what I skipped.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I'd like to ask a question about power of attorney, financial
yeah.
power of attorney.
Yeah.
So I have financial power of attorney for my mother, but the bank where she banked at will not recognize that until I go in person and complete their forms and submit them. But they don't have a bank around here.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I've
Bank
just
of America or something, because
yep.
I know
Yep.
that's it. Okay. How did I go?
Yeah. So
Can
I've
they
been,
be helpful with that?
What?
Have you asked them what you can do in lieu of the fact that there is no Bank
They
of America?
said there is nothing.
Oh.
My sister has a Bank of America where she lives, and they won't let her go in and do it for me. She can
Okay,
only go in and do it for her, but then she's in Georgia, which doesn't help me with my mom's checkbook. So I have just been trying to pay anything I can with a debit card, and to avoid having to write a check and sign it.
that could be even problematic later. And I'm not telling you to do this, but I think first thing that hit me was, and I don't know if you're talking about a lot of money or if your mom's comfortable with that bank,
No.
to change
No.
it. You can always put your money in a bank that does have an office here if there,
I could. She was an employee of that bank, so she gets
Oh,
certain
okay.
benefits and
Connection.
things like
Okay.
that because she keeps her account there. It's not a
Okay.
lot of money, but
Okay, but still, no, because I'm familiar with having to do that, at banks in some
Mhm.
cases. And of course, it's for her protection,
Mhm.
and so they feel that that's the way to protect her, is to see the person in person, to have them swear, to have it sworn, maybe notarized, witnessed, and everything else. And I don't know if anybody else in this group that's listening is an attorney or has that kind of background, but again, it's a special thing that I'm not familiar with, though
Okay.
vaguely I am, and I'm guessing that it's either another bank or you're gonna have to, now, is there one in Chicago?
There is one in Chicago. I'm just trying to avoid to go there, but yeah,
Yeah, I think there's one downtown, right?
yeah, there is. Yeah,
So that may be, get on the
the
train,
only
take it,
option.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the Thompson Center, did you say?
I said there is one. I just have to take the time and go down there
Okay,
then, but
yeah, I can't think of another way you could prove it to them
okay.
without and if that's their rule, that's their rule.
Rule.
You know,
Okay.
that's, again, somebody else might have another idea, maybe there's some other way around it. But I would think they would tell you that if there was, especially
That's what I would have thought too, right?
since she was an employee. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't
Yeah.
help you.
That's okay. I just thought I'd ask to see.
Yeah, I guess Bank of America, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I just want to throw out there that similar to what we're kind of parallel to what we talked about last week, the whole idea with the power of attorney for property or financial things is, should there come a time when you are unable to speak for yourself, you want to have something lined up clearly about who will be able to do that. Um, something catastrophic happens and you are unable to speak. You're unconscious in the hospital. You're up in Milwaukee and they've got you. God help you. You're in the ICU with my brother. You will not be able to say, you know what, now's a great time to sell the piece of land I've been holding on to because I'm going to have some big medical bills coming my way. You can't say that. But if you have already talked to your person and they know, this is what I would want you to do, fantastic. Um, and as Kathy noted, there's the point at which the authority goes from your power of attorney. Um, so when you die, your power of attorney ends, and then it is either your trustee for your trust or your executor for your will, and then they take over with the authority that you have given them in those documents. Um, when Andrea and I had some of these things prepared, our attorney said, um, you know, uh, similar to what you said, Kathy, a will and a trust, there's a lot of overlap, but they do some slightly different things. And he said, when I prepare these for people, I do both because, Kathy, like you said, sometimes the will is kind of a catch-all. And I remember the example he gave was, you have everything you own completely specified in the trust. Great. I'm still going to put the will together because let's say, Eric, tomorrow you go out and buy a lotto ticket. They pull the numbers and you go, I've got the winning lotto ticket. You tuck it in your pocket and you get hit by a bus crossing the street. If it's not specified in the trust, that could lead to problems. However, your will works slightly differently, and that will pick that up and kind of catch that. So they,
Yeah.
it seems to
The-
be a both and type of thing rather than a one or the other.
Yeah, they have something called a pour over will. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. And that means it's going to pour. If it's not in that trust, it's going to pour over. And there was a woman this morning, I can't remember her name. I didn't know her before today. And she mentioned, even she said, I did the trust and then I realized a year went by and I had these things that suddenly should have been in there. Or the lawyer will tell you, do this, but you forget about it. So you're not
Right.
taking care of it. It's not updated or something's been sold and it's not there anymore.
Yep.
But and the other thing is that when you were talking past you, it made me think of it, the poor over will. Oh, she said something humorous after. She said, I don't want to be resuscitated. And I still worry that I'm going to be someplace and they won't know. She said, I was going to have tattooed on my chest, do not resuscitate. So when they take my shirt off, there it is, you know. She was so worried about that. But it's true. You can do your best. But at the end of the day, in some cases, if families don't get along, they will argue about it. They will take one another to court and they'll fight even the most sound document you have. But hopefully, you know, most people won't have that problem and everything will be just fine.
Yes. And again, another parallel with the medical stuff we talked about last week. These are not necessarily, I do it once and I put it on the shelf, and 50 years later, when I die, somebody pulls them out. These are things you should probably revisit periodically. Change in family situation, change in what assets you have, what assets you don't. Um, get these things updated periodically.
Right. You want to change your executor, just do it. Say, well, I don't like that person. I'm going to go fix it, you know.
Right. Exactly. Um, so a couple things that should have been in that electronic folder of documents. One is an article from Purdue, and it's titled "Without a Will in Indiana," and it specifies this is what happens if you don't have a will in Indiana. The state will figure out what's going to happen with all your stuff. And if you look at that and you go, you know what, that actually is pretty good. You know, I would love for my stuff to be distributed like this. Fantastic. Just don't leave Indiana. Um, so that is one thing. So that kind of will hopefully inspire you to say, I should probably make some plans ahead about this. The other is a list of estate planning attorneys in the area. The last time I did this series in preparation for it, I asked in the congregation if anybody has done any work with this and you have an attorney you've worked with and you were happy with the experience, please give me the contact info. And that is how that list came to be. And on the advice of another attorney, up at the top of the list, it does say informational purposes only. Someone's name being on this list does not constitute an endorsement by the congregation. Um, as I've said before, one of the things I hope we can do with these sessions is try to remove as many obstacles or as possible. So if you've been thinking, yeah, this all sounds really good, but where am I going to find an attorney? I don't think I just want to sit down and Google estate planning guy near me. Um, you have some ones that people in your church have used and been happy with. So please make use of that. That resource. I do know the very first name on the list, and since this is going on YouTube and anyone in the world can see it, I'm not going to specify, but for those of you who have the documents, the very first name on the list is a member of the congregation. This is not the area of law he deals with every day, but he did say if people are in a situation where um, they may not be able to pay market rate for some of these things, that he would probably be able to work with you on that. So just want you to keep that in mind. So yeah, wills, trusts, joint ownership, accounts can be set up as payable on death. Um, you want to avoid probate, I believe, is the bottom line, because probate costs time and it costs money.
Can I ask another question? The assets have to be a certain amount in order to go into probate, correct? Or there has to be real estate?
No, No, they're, I do think they speed things up and they will make special, at least what I've read, make special exceptions for very small, estate situations when it comes to taxes and the length of time it takes. But a will is a will, even if it's a simple one that you wrote from home, if people are going to want to use that, not just hide it and decide between themselves.
No, I guess what I mean is my mom has nothing. She probably has $1,000 to her name. So she doesn't have anything, I mean, she doesn't have a will or anything. But the question is there going to be an issue with this then?
How can I say this? And in the beginning, I mentioned for some people, it works if you don't have things or if things are in joint. If your name, for example, although now that you mentioned power of attorney, if your name is not on the checking account, then
there's not. Yeah.
Okay, then you're going to have to go through some hoops. When my mother became older, my sister and I have a brother too, but he didn't care. We put our names on the account. So in the event she passed or, whatever,
Okay.
it didn't matter. It came to one of us. I still have some money from that account sitting just to keep it open because she wanted to give it to an organization that I can't seem to find. It's been a long time. But it's where she worked. Calumet City Resources. It was, donation place. I can't find anybody there. But so we didn't have a will. We didn't go through probate because she didn't have anything. She had money in her checking account, period.
Yeah.
Why would I take that into probate with a will saying she leaves the money? Okay, but if you feel most comfortable though, and if that's truly all she has, that's one of the options. Let's put it that way. And I want to advise you what to do. And if you wanted to go to a lawyer and also ask somebody that specifically does that, you could do that. But that's why we talk about, payable on death or, joint ownerships. If there isn't anything else, then why would you want to have a will? You have a will to distribute things in a way that you want. If she, for example, didn't want you to have it and wanted your grandchildren to have it, and you're still alive and it goes intestate, it's going to go to you and not the grandchildren. So, depending on the state. Does that make sense? What I mean?
Yeah, and she's in Indiana now, so that's what I was.
Yeah, and I think that sort of thing is, probably the way.
Okay.
When we say intestate, it means that you have things when you die that don't belong to somebody else as well. That doesn't go to you when she dies. That isn't a joint ownership.
Okay.
And she wouldn't have anything if your name was on that. Now, if it isn't, that's another story.
Okay. So an option would be for my sister to go to the Bank of America because she can get to it, put her name on the account, and that would solve a lot of problems.
Yes.
Okay, I think we might do that then. Okay. Okay.
Other questions on anything we've touched on so far?
And just one comment. I know Kathy mentioned, I think I heard her say something about irrevocable trusts, and I have some knowledge of that with respect to people who put all their money in one of those or have a lawyer do it in such a way whereby if that person then goes into a nursing home, none of her proceeds get touched for the care, and basically the state pays for it, which doesn't really sound that right to me, but it's legal nonetheless. Is that a true statement, Kathy?
Well, I'm not a good person to ask that one. However, it would sound to me that would be the case because it's one of those trusts that they can't change, which is why it's taxed differently. They can't turn it back. They can't say, oh, well, I'm in the nursing home, so now I'm not going to pay for it. I'm going to have the state pay for it because that money is no longer theirs. It belongs to the trust. It belongs to the person when they die. Or, sometimes you can give money away beforehand. But that is a little more of it might vary in states. It would make sense to me, but I can't say for sure. But if that is true, then I think that's probably the reason.
Okay. Thanks.
Mhm. I think I'll add, I think that there's a period of time that has to pass for those kinds of things. So you can't just say,
Yeah.
you have to go to a nursing home next week and then you run and create a trust, so that your money goes there. I think there are rules about that. But again, that would be an expert to tell you.
There are, because we had a neighbor whose wife had MS and he knew she was going to have to go to a nursing home and he could not move that money anywhere. They wouldn't let him.
Right, it was
Even
too
though
late.
it was still going to be a few years, they said, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So have we convinced everybody of the importance of getting these things done?
We're not done, but thought about and planned.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Well, yes, and again, hopefully, like I've said more than once, this is what I hope is the start of conversations. Um, I've had a couple of folks mention to me over the last couple of weeks, "Oh, Pastor, I feel so guilty. I don't have any of these things done." I said, don't feel guilty. The whole point is there's a lot of people who don't have these things done, and I want to at least equip you so you know what questions to ask. But again, when you go to fill out the medical stuff, talk to your doctor. When you go to fill out these sort of property and legal things, talk to an attorney. When you want to talk about your funeral plans and that sort of thing, talk to an actual pastor. Um, and please do not talk to somebody who went to the online seminary and got ordained so they could, marry their cousin or something like that. So, start of conversations, absolutely. Um,
Something that I wanted to share when John and I did this with our attorney, and also our financial advisor was involved in it too. This is something that came up that I had no idea that we should do. And our financial advisor wanted us to have a financial power of attorney in place so that if we ever traveled outside of the country together and something happened and one of us needed, money freed up to get it medevaced back or medical bills there, if you're out of the country, you can't request it. It's against the federal law. So he said, you need someone in the country who has a power of attorney for your finances so that I know if they call me and say, hey, they need $15,000 to get whatever, to get on a plane to get her home or him home, that they can free that money up because you can't make the request from outside of the country.
I'm going to guess that's probably part of the Patriot Act.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And
hopefully
just
the money's
remember,
not in the Bank of America. Yeah, okay.
right.
That's right.
I was going to say, or if you get the call, Grandma, I'm in
Yeah.
Spain,
Yeah.
and you need to pay my bail in iTunes
That's
gift
right.
cards.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't do it.
Fair.
That's right.
Right. So, I want to talk a little bit about, when you sit down with your professional people and draw up, what I have been blessed, to whatever extent you have been blessed with material things, what I want to do with them. Uh, really want to encourage you to remember your church, and of course, this applies to any nonprofit or any group. Um, whether it is the hospice organization that took care of mom or dad, it's the foundation that's doing research on the chronic condition that your child has, whatever the case may be. There are planned giving. And I had a church treasurer who just loved that phrase. He goes, Eric, I love the way you talk about it, saying planned giving when you're really talking about people dying. I said, come on, Steve, just take it easy. But regardless of what organization you want to support, planned giving is the gold standard in how you can support an organization and strengthen them to keep doing whatever the mission is that you support. Um, your family will also see this in your will or trust or whatever, and they will go, wow, of course mom would leave money to this group, she really did a lot with them. Or your family might go, wow, i I never knew dad felt so passionately about this, that, or the other. This is another way to share those values with the people around you. At Holy Shepherd, we have a gift policy. So there are two kinds of gifts that you can leave to a church. One is an unrestricted gift. It is simply, I want to leave X dollar amount, or I want to leave X percentage of what I have to my church. And at Holy Shepherd, there is a gift policy where it specifies this is what we are going to do with an unrestricted gift, just a chunk of money that comes in, no strings attached. One of the reasons we have a gift policy is people can look at it and they can say, you know what, I love the way this works. This is great, and they'll feel good knowing it's going to be used like this. It also prevents sometimes in congregations there's a big chunk of money that comes in, and people say, we got this bequest. And you sit down at a meeting with the congregation, and the first person stands up and says, great, we can finally get the roof fixed. And someone else jumps up and says, no, 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 no. Our cemetery is a wreck. We need this for the cemetery. And somebody else says, what we really need is a band, because you all know how the young people love the rock music and so on. And then people get to fight over it. If there's a policy that's in writing, people know, okay, this is what we're doing. If you, and certainly if you would like to see a copy of that policy, I'd be happy to forward that on to you. You can also leave a designated gift. You can say, I'm going to leave this chunk of money and I would like it to benefit, fill in the blank. Particular ministry, particular need. You could leave it and say, we had a person at my previous congregation. Her husband was a stationary engineer, and there was a gift to the church specifically for, this is for your HVAC systems. So when you need to do some stuff with your HVAC, that's what it's for. As Kathy mentioned, if there's something more specific you would like to do, take into consideration the amount of money versus what it would cost to accomplish that. And again, if you leave $1,000 to rebuild the organ and you have a pipe organ, it's a wonderful thought, but you can't even get a pipe organ tuned for $1,000. And I am not making that up. Or you could say, you know what, I'd like to leave $1,000 for the music ministry of the congregation. And that would still honor what you want to do, but would also allow it to be used. You could certainly reach out to your church council. You could certainly reach out to the pastor if you're thinking about doing something like this, and you know, could probably get some good ideas on that. Something else I want to draw your attention to: one of the documents in your folder should be a flyer from the ELCA Foundation. The ELCA Foundation is actually a really great organization, and it offers some very interesting benefits and possibilities to ELCA members. If you have the chance, if you can open that document, or if you printed one, or you can open it later, but there are many different vehicles that you can use to make a gift. Again, I certainly hope you would make a gift to your congregation, but many charitable organizations have these sorts of things. So, in addition to just a bequest in your will, when I die, X amount of money is going to go to my church. Great. But there are different vehicles you can use that offer you different kinds of tax advantages. There are ones that offer you a benefit right now and will offer the organization a benefit later. There are charitable remainder trusts, there are gift annuities, there are donor advised funds, there are endowed funds. There's all sorts of things you can do. Uh, and one of the advantages of these things, some of them you can see a tax benefit now when you are alive to appreciate it. Some of them allow you to make a gift and it can have an immediate impact on your congregation or whatever organization you want to support, and you can actually see the blessing that this is for your organization. You don't have to be thinking about, well, I know it's going to really help them after I'm gone. I won't be around to see it. But there are things you can do now, and it offers you a benefit of one kind or another, and it offers a benefit to the organization you want to support. Now, like I said, there are all these different tools for doing that. Um, and I, as you can tell, probably am not 100% up to speed on what are the advantages of each one, so on and so forth. But thankfully, the ELCA Foundation has people who do this. So they have regional representatives. They are called gift officers. Ours here in Indiana is Carl Bierman, and his email address is on your handout and his phone number. And you can call him as you are talking to your attorney, as you are talking to your doctor. You can call Carl and say, I'd like to do something to benefit my church. I'd like to do something to benefit, whatever organization. Um, and he can talk with you about, what's your situation? What is the, kind of amount of money you're dealing with? Some of these financial tools, you need to have a minimum dollar amount. Um, so, he can help you identify what is going to help you achieve what you want to do, and do so with the least tax burden and so on. Um, so it's a really good resource, and the regional gift officers, they are paid salary by the ELCA Foundation. They are not out there trying to get a cut of whatever you are doing. Um, so they're not going to try to sell you on, well, make sure you use this one, because if you do, then I get 10% of it. Um, this is a great resource. I don't remember the name of the program, but they also have a program. The last time I talked to one of our regional gift officers, they said you can work with them to set up a trust and you make them the beneficiary of the trust. And then you call and you talk to the foundation and you specify, this is how I want any funds or whatever distributed. And he said the advantage of doing that is, um, something comes up and you say, you know what, I want to change the allocation of where the money is going. Your trust doesn't change. Your beneficiary of your trust is still the ELCA Foundation. All you do is call your gift officer and say, hey, it's Kathy. Um, I know right now my plan is to have it broken up like this, but something has changed. I need you to update how I want these things allocated. They will update that and you're set. So you don't need to go through your attorney to get the thing updated. Um, and of course, uh, attorneys need to make a living. So if you are going through that to update this, you will probably get charged for it. Um, this is just a different way to approach that. Um, so yeah, I would really encourage you to investigate some of the options through the ELCA Foundation. And of course, if you do that sort of thing where you make them the beneficiary of your trust, you say, I want to leave some money to my congregation, I also want to leave some to the Audubon Society, and I also want to leave some to the Tom Fund for Advancement of Tom. The foundation will sit there, and once the money comes in from the trust, they will sit there and they will write a check to your congregation, a check to the Audubon Society, and a check to the Tom Fund for the Advancement of Tom. So it's not you are not limited only in giving to your church when you go through the ELCA Foundation. But yeah, planned giving. Talk to anyone you know who is working in any kind of nonprofit sort of venture. Tell them you're thinking about some planned giving, and watch their face light up like you've given them a diamond. Let me pause there. Other questions, insights, concerns? Just out of curiosity, is there anyone here who has needed to act as executor of a will or trustee of a trust? See a couple of hands going up. What, just in general terms, what was your experience of that?
I will mention first that even though I'm an attorney, in 2 cases, I hired an attorney to handle the probate because I didn't feel qualified to do it. As the executor, making decisions about that, and about, in one case, how much money was going to pay on an automobile accident, I made those decisions. It was a good experience, I think, but you feel very responsible when there's a great deal of money involved.
It was, actually, it was John, but I helped him out tremendously. It was not a good experience at all. There was a lot of family discord and a lot of people upset, and, a will found hidden in a bedroom closet, and, all of that. So it was quite a rough experience. But we got through it and we learned a lot. So that was the good part.
I was very fortunate. Everyone agreed. Nobody, it just couldn't have been more pleasant, with people wanting to, I don't care, whatever you think is right.
Mhm.
Nobody felt cheated, or they should get this, or first choice, or second, or anything.
Mhm.
I was very fortunate. You're right, that can happen. It can be a big problem.
I do have a family member who ended up serving as the executor for another family member, and it was more like Angie's experience. It was
Mhm.
1,000 different accounts tucked in 500 different places,
Places.
and people making accusations of, oh, well, the executor is skimming money out of it because we haven't gotten our check yet, and this and that. And I just went,
Yeah.
oh.
Oh yeah,
So,
terrible.
so again,
The only good thing that came out of ours was the deceased had a $7,000 fine at DuPage County that they decided, oh, she's dead, we don't want it. That was the only thing that good that came
okay,
out.
well, I guess take what you can get.
Yeah, yeah.
Shirley handles a lot of accounting for estates, and therefore has a lot of experience dealing with people that have gone through this experience. And I can say authoritatively, based on that Kathy's experience is more the exception, and Angie's experience is more the rule.
Which is why
You
it's
know,
important to have everything spelled out, because then
Yeah.
nobody can argue.
yeah. I do have another question. And this is related to tax, and maybe Tom surely knows this answer. I don't know. Filing taxes. So it seems like all the people I know that have died, my dad's been executor for several of our family members, and John has for his, they stopped filing their taxes. And because of their assets, we had to go back and file years of taxes before we could even submit things to probate. And I mean, it's because you had to hold up and wait for the IRS. My mom, on the other hand, owes no taxes. You know, she has no income, you know, so she owes nothing. But I've been insisting that my sister file her taxes every year, just because I don't want to get into a situation where we're sitting. But is that necessary if you already know you don't owe taxes? Or is it just a good policy to avoid any problems?
I mean, my recommendation would be to contact Shirley because she's the accountant.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm just the assistant. But I do dum taxes between now and middle of April. But my impression is that, I mean, obviously the year you die, you still have to do a tax return, providing, you know, you have taxable income. You know, if you don't, I guess you don't, but if you have any kind of instrument or something from the bank or anything, you would have to keep filing a tax return until your estate is taken care of and disbanded, you know, basically. You know, people have to file estate returns on their estates for years after someone died because they haven't closed out the estate.
We did that, yeah.
And this is 100% conjecture on my part. I just have the feeling that even if you have no income, there's probably some sort of paperwork or thing you should file to show that you have no income. I would assume
See,
the
that's,
IRS would want a document to say, yeah, we've done our due diligence and there is nothing here to tax. I'm sure as long as they have the right form on it, great. But I suspect you can't just say, well, there was no income, so we're not going to file anything. It just does not strike me as very government agency-esque.
Yeah.
I do know this. I mean, if you have basically nothing and you're alive, you don't have to file a tax return. If you basically have no income that's going to, you know, generate either a tax that you have to pay or a refund that you could get. You know, if you have nothing, you don't have to file a return if you're alive. So, you know.
And then I would add, and then if you pass and there's no probate of any kind, I mean, the government, what are they going to do? The person's dead. They can't go after anybody for anything. I mean, you would be done. You know, if you had a situation where you owned things and people took, you know, just what they had, their part of it, and there's nothing to leave. You're not even going to hear from the IRS. No.
Okay.
And if you did, who cares? Because you don't have to respond. It's the nobody else they can go after, just the person who's dead. You know, I hate to be ruled that way, but you know.
Right. Okay.
But again, it depends upon your individual circumstance. You know, but now if you've got a lot of money being, you know, passed around in wills and trusts, then the IRS is going to say, wait, I want to make sure is there a piece there for us? You know.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, was this truly an irrevocable trust or a revocable trust? I mean, where's ours? But if there isn't anything like that, you're not going to have a problem.
Okay.
And if you did, it wouldn't be yours.
Okay.
But feel free to give Shirley a call at our office.
Yeah, I might, because you know my mom makes less than the minimum to pay taxes on, you know, and she has for years. So, my sister
stop
have
in.
to keep doing this. Yes, so I might do that. Okay.
I mean, she's right by Strax there.
Yeah.
I could also give you my contact info for my guy at the Bank of Panama.
Panama. Yes.
His Swiss bank too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I speak more Spanish than German, so I'm going to be down in Panama. So, for any of our friends at the IRS who might watch this video, I am joking.
Yeah.
So, if you don't see me in a couple weeks because I have a court date, you'll know why. But once again, just being together to, you know, kind of raise some of these issues and kind of see these are the sorts of things that might come up. I hope will inspire folks to say, yeah, I want to get on this sooner rather than later, and I want to talk to a pro about making sure it's all done above board. So hopefully we can give you that that inspiration and at least point you in the right direction on it. Also, remember your church. Other questions, comments, concerns, insights?
I have a question. Am I reaching? Am I muted?
Yes. Nope, we can hear you.
I recently signed up at about 2 years ago over at Thrivent and started some Roth IRAs, and they're real big on that. You know, making working with you on doing afterlife giving, if you will. And I don't recall what the answers were, but I remember when we were going to a manual church in Maryville, one of the guys there actually worked for Thrivent, and there was always these times where Thrivent was like doing matching donations, and they were very involved in that from a financial standpoint, and that's why I eventually opened an account with them. But I haven't talked about that because it's just a minor. I haven't talked about that with Eric. He's the guy that has the facility here in St. John. I haven't talked to him about those options yet, because that's a very small part of my retirement. But I think I'm going to get more information on that, because it's one of those things where you can leave that account open, and if you have a sizable sum, it doesn't have to be a single donation. It can be distributed over years.
Yep.
Until it's gone, which I always thought was kind of a nice idea. So, but I think that a lot of that, it would just go to the ELCA. I don't know if it goes locally or what the details are, but
yeah, and certainly, talk to your representative. Say, hey, tell me how this is set up. How the beneficiaries work, and have that conversation with your representative. Have that conversation with your family, and wherever you want it to go, just make sure it's the place that that's where you want it. But definitely, yes, I would absolutely talk to your representative about that.
okay.
Well, if we don't have other questions or things that are coming up right in the moment, like I said, let me just make sure I commend that list of attorneys in the area to you one more time, and encourage you, if you don't have these things in place, to get that ball rolling. So, Kathy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your expertise and sharing that knowledge with us, and certainly helping us get a good sense of what questions we'd have to ask. So why don't we close our study together tonight, praying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thanks, Kathy.
Oh, you're welcome for the limited information I could give. Sorry, I wasn't an expert in the field, but call somebody.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Blessings on your evening, and we'll see everybody soon.
Thank you, Pastor.
Hey, you
Bye-bye.
too.
All right. Good night.